There we go. Did you hear that?
I heard it.
Okay.
I am, in that case, I am calling to order the Planning Commission meeting of September 28th. As most people probably already know, this is a remote meeting, and if you're having trouble getting on, there is a email, and there's also a telephone number. And people attending will be guests, and you need to raise your hand if you want to speak. And I should also point out that we do have time limits on speakers, 3 minutes generally, but it's somewhat flexible. So may I have the roll call?
Go ahead, Kristen.
Okay. Daniel Kunstler, Vice Chair.
I'm here.
Brock Wagstaff, Chair.
I am here too.
Laura Tauber.
Here.
Natasha Chalmers.
Yes, I'm right here.
And let the record show that Commissioner Swisher has already informed us he will not be in attendance tonight.
Okay. I think the first order of business is if there is anybody in the audience that has wants to speak on matters not on the agenda. Please raise your hand if that's the case.
I just got a raised hand from Kevin Hara. Kevin, I'm allowing you to talk. You need to unmute your computer.
Did that work?
There you are.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks. I'll be brief. Good evening, Chairman Wagstaff and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Kevin Haroff. I'm a resident of the city of Larkspur, situated in that part of the city, which is located within the multi-jurisdictional community of Green Bay, California. In the interest of full disclosure, I am a member of the Larkspur City Council and currently am the city's mayor. That said, my statements tonight are made strictly in my capacity as a private citizen and are in no way a reflection of the views of the city in any official way. I previously have written to this commission to express concerns over the planning and construction of a project at 50 La Cuesta Drive, which is located immediately next door to my own family's personal residence. The project entails major modifications to the height, extent, and bulk of an existing roofline. Modifications that clearly are intended to take advantage of a change to Larkspur Municipal Code section, to a change in Larkspur Municipal Code section 18.64.020. According to the Planning Department staff report, the change was proposed to streamline ground level single-story additions on property with modest to steep terrain, recognizing that it is not uncommon for the downhill sides of a single-story residence to exceed 15 feet in height above the natural grade. The conditions cited as the justification for the change to the code are not implicated in the present case. The property on which the project is being constructed is substantially level, with no material change in elevation of the sort contemplated in the staff report. The property clearly does not have the topographic characteristics the city had in mind when it approved the modification to the height limit exemption for design review from 15 to 20 feet. In my earlier letter, I requested that the commission reconsider the height design review standard in the municipal code. That request apparently has been declined. Of equal concern, the project owner has completely ignored the city's design guidelines and submittal requirements for single-family dwellings, which anticipate that there will be a balancing of the needs and expectations of the applicant with those of the surrounding neighbors, many of whom have likely lived in the neighborhood for many years, have made substantial investments in their homes, and have developed an understandable attachment to the surrounding visual qualities that comprise the neighborhood. In this case, no meaningful attempt was made to engage neighbors in advance of the applicant obtaining permits to develop this project. The first time the neighborhood became aware of the project's magnitude and scope was only after demolition of the existing structure had started and initial phases of construction had begun. It is my intent to request that this matter be reviewed by the City Council, although I would of course recuse myself from any decisions that the council might make in this regard. I would hope that this commission would support my request. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. This is not a discussion item, so I think we will move on to anybody else who might want to speak on items not on the agenda. Do you see anybody else? Kristen? Hello? Can
I
you
had
hear?
to unmute myself. Sorry, no, I see no other hands.
Anybody else want to raise their hand?
I see a hand showing up.
This is new. Okay. I have allowed phone number 415-241-1402 to speak. You have to unmute your computer, please.
Or your phone?
Phone, either way.
Yeah, they've dialed in. But their phone is on mute. Is there a way to? You can't unmute it, Kristen? Their phone
I
is
can't, I
showing-
have to ask them to unmute their own system. It says ask to unmute. My options are just to lower the hand, rename, those kinds of things.
Right. Why don't we check back at another time later in the meeting and see if they're able
I
to
saw-
unmute.
I saw a phone icon just pop up. Is that it, or it went away?
So that was Karen. How
I still have their hand.
Oh, wait, they're
he's
on now.
unmuted now. Yeah.
James Holmes speaking, sorry. I just wanted to, Larkspur resident, wanted to say that I concur with Mr. Haroff's comments and would join in his request for the commission to review the circumstances of this ordinance and its applicability in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Are there any other hands?
Let me check lower. I do not see any additional hands.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to move on to the planning director's report.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Wagstaff and members of the commission. A few items to mention tonight. The one is you may have read in the newspaper and otherwise heard there is a tentative proposal to develop transitional housing for homeless persons at a vacant property at 1251 South Alicio Boulevard. This is a property along South Alicio in our administrative and professional office district, sort of characterized with a lot of medical offices in that area and close to just right on the edge of multifamily housing as well, a number of condominium dwellings. This is a building that's been vacant for over 10 years now. It had originally been built as a nursing care home, and then was converted to Marin Services for Women in the early 2000s, and maintained that activity for several years until the economic downturn, and Marin Services for Women had to vacate the building and could no longer have that use. And so it's been vacant for many years, somewhat of an attractive nuisance. We've had several proposals, preliminary and formal applications come in for a variety of uses, somewhat medical or certain types of residential care, but nothing that's really come to fruition. And so the project that you're hearing about is called Project Homekey. And I've sent you some information in a email just a little bit ago. I apologize, I haven't sent it earlier. But this is a project where the county partners with other nonprofit groups to leverage and use COVID relief funding that is targeted towards this type of housing, transitional and supportive housing to address homelessness. And it particularly encourages the rehabilitation or redevelopment of existing buildings, using existing buildings, whether they're hotels, motels, dilapidated buildings such as this are really prime candidates. So this is a site that is being looked at. There's no formal proposal at this time, but we'll be working with the Episcopal Community Services, ECS, and the county on doing more public outreach and getting more information out there to the public as this project, if and when it comes more to fruition. Because it is a project using these funds, it's essentially exempt from local zoning standards. So there's no real public hearing use permit requirement for it, but we would be processing building permits to assure health and safety compliance. And again, all the parties involved do want to conduct thorough public outreach and work to address concerns and issues that may be voiced from the neighborhood. And again, it's not a homeless shelter. This is transitional housing, and these would actually be units. What are currently right now, so it originally were beds and bedrooms with bathrooms, would be given kitchenettes. And so we believe the plan is to create these as units. And another benefit for the city is helping us meet our housing goals. This is a project that could potentially achieve our very low and extremely low income categories and really kind of bring the city over the top relative to our current RENA requirement. So that's information there, and I've sent you some links about Project Homekey and about this particular project that the county is working with Episcopal Community Services on. So if you have any questions, I could answer them now, or certainly we can always, as I said, we'll be getting more information as we go. Other things coming up. On October 6th, the City Council excuse me, will be hearing a presentation from Marin County Housing Authority. They're going to be hearing, what they're going to be hearing is outreach. It's a presentation on AB 686, which is really the state requirement to affirmatively further fair housing. So they're going to be hearing a presentation about fair housing, equity measures, and this is particularly to inform our housing element. Other items on that night are going to be there's the City Council will be considering a climate emergency resolution. This is a resolution to sort of prioritize addressing climate concerns and to look at all matters of spending and policy with some lens on the climate action plan and those goals. So that's an issue that the council will be considering on that evening, as well as they'll be reviewing, considering a preface for the climate action plan. Well, they have adopted the climate action plan. There was interest from advocates in the community to include a preface or vision statement to kind of add some sense of what a climate action plan could mean for Larkspur, what it might look like in 10 years at the, resulting from the accumulation of the climate action goals and policies. So those are a couple items that'll be heard on that evening. And then on the 20th, we're now in process close to finishing our contract, a very significant contract with EMC Planning Group to assist the city in the housing element process. And they would be very hands-on. And this is a process that's really going to be on a clock, and it's very prescribed in detail. The requirements and mandates of doing the housing element are outlined through state legislation and direction and guidance from HCD, and using funds from ABAG. There are funds that are going towards ABAG in the county to provide regional assistance. And there are some funds coming directly to cities to help fund our part of the program. But it's going to be partially a collaborative effort with the county and other agencies in Marin, with a focus on community focus on our own specific story and our zoning and our details and our sites. So it's going to be, I think, one might say, a Herculean effort. Of course, we have a significant RENA, and it's unlikely that's going to change to any great degree by the first of the year. So we'll be looking at a very significant RENA, and we're also having to look at doing an outreach process that really involves the community and engages the community in those solutions. So on the 20th, we're planning to have our consultants present the work program, particularly the public outreach, and kind of launch that process at that meeting. So with that, do you have any other questions of staff?
Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, I did have a quick question, Neil. Speaking of the low income housing possibility that the first item, do you know how many units are there presently in terms of?
Let me just check, where did I put that?
It's a pretty big piece of property, and it's a one-story building.
Sorry, I just had this in front of me just a second ago.
Existing building is over 40,000 square feet.
Yeah, and they're proposing, Kristen, do you have that in front of you? They're proposing how many units?
40, I thought.
Yeah, they have, and they're basically going to be taking the bedrooms. The existing layout is basically, it's a one-story, sort of a horseshoe shaped structure with a large alcove, with just a whole series of bedrooms, units kind of around the hallways and the facilities, with a common kitchen, some common areas. But let me see if I can find that in just a second, because I just sent you information on that.
It hasn't been used for a long time, that building, or at least not used well.
It's been about 13 years.
Yeah.
Marin Services for Women, I think, left after the 2008 downturn. And it has been neglected quite a bit. I've been in and out of it in recent years. And it had a flooding issue too from fire sprinklers that went off and ran for 4 days.
Oh, geez.
So they had to, take out wall, all the drywall and everything, and open a lot of stuff up to dry it out properly. Has a nice wood frame though.
That created a lot of damage interior. Yeah, they're proposing 43 units.
Okay. Good to know.
And again, it would be transitional housing. which typically, and I don't remember the details, but what it does is you really have to qualify. And it is for, people who are homeless, but you have to really, meet criteria and qualify, and then be on a path. I think they like to get turnover and get people into more permanent housing within 6 months to a year.
Yeah, it's generating a fair amount of public comment already. Both positive and negative. Okay, we'll move on. We don't have any consent items, and the first item on the agenda is a application for a classroom or a school at the Redwood Presbyterian Church. And if we can have the staff report, please.
Good evening, Chair Wagstaff and members of the commission. The applicants are requesting a conditional use permit for private school use at the Redwood Presbyterian Church. The church is located at the corner of Magnolia and Alexander Avenues. The proposed use would include up to 5 teachers and 2 administrative staff members, serving up to 32 students, including 8 students in 3rd to 4th grade, 12 students in 5th to 6th grade, and 12 students in 7th to 8th grade. The school operations would occupy 3 classrooms and an administrative space in the lower level of the facility. School activities are proposed to occur typically 4 days a week from 8:30 to 3:30, and optional morning extended care and afternoon enrichment classes from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So just to give you a little background, the church was originally constructed in 1950, and in 1957, the city council granted a use permit allowing an expansion of the original church facilities to permit both church operation and Christian education facility. As constructed, the church school facility includes the church with an adjacent rectory and 2 levels of school classrooms. There are no parking spaces provided on site. In the past, there have been previous private school uses, including Real School and Northbridge Academy. Most recently, the Westminster Presbyterian Church temporarily leased 3 lower level classrooms for approximately a year while the church facilities are being remodeled. The lease ended in November of last year, and since then, the 3 classrooms have been vacant. There is no expansion of the structure or addition of rooms proposed with this use permit. The applicant did provide a traffic management plan, and it also provides a description of where there is on-street parking, but again, the on-street parking is available for any public use. Families will be discouraged from parking on Magnolia Avenue southbound, as that would require escorting children on 2 crosswalks to get to the building. The Kronos Academy will coordinate families to carpool from San Anselmo and Fairfax to alleviate traffic parking and for the convenience of families. Staff members will likely parallel park on Alexander Avenue eastbound and Magnolia Avenue southbound in available on-street parking spaces and leave parking closer to the building for parents of the students. We did receive 1 letter of support, and that was from the church pastor, and that is provided as an attachment for the staff report. We haven't received any other public comment. As required by the municipal code, a conditional use permit is required to allow the Kronos Academy to use space within the church and school facility. And that's because it is a private use or private school use. So in order for the Planning Commission to approve a conditional use permit, there are specific findings that must be made to support the application. As provided with the staff report are findings to support the proposed use. Subject to the implementation of the proposed traffic management plan and conditions of approval, The private school use within the existing church and school facility is not considered detrimental to the health, safety, morals, and comfort, convenience, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the neighborhood, nor injurious to the property of improvements in the neighborhood. We have included conditions of approval for your consideration, and the conditions address on-street parking to clarify that it is available for general public use and that staff parking areas identified in the pickup and drop-off plan are not specifically designated to Kronos Academy under this use permit. Again, on-street parking may be used if it's available. If any of the conditions of approval are violated, the Planning Commission may hold a hearing and determine that the use permit should be revoked. With that, staff is recommending approval of the project subject to the findings and conditions as provided. And I'd be happy to answer any questions of the commission.
Does anybody have any questions? I actually do have one thing that I think would be nice to add to the conditions of approval, which, and maybe it's there and I'm not seeing it, but this is one of the few crosswalks that doesn't have the blinking lights where you can push a button. And there's people really moving along Magnolia. So just because they're not supposed to park doesn't mean kids won't be walking down that side and trying to get across. And I understand they're going to have a crossing person. Is that correct?
Yes.
During school hours. But in any case, it might be nice to get the lights put in for other people too.
I'm not sure we can condition this particular use permit to make that happen. That would be a pretty high expense. We could send a recommendation to the Department of Public Works that you believe that's a necessary improvement.
I think it's a safety issue, honestly, but
Yeah, and I this is this Director Toft, I'm kind of hearing in, and I'm actually curious because there's a lot of improvements, as you've seen, to crosswalks. The city's about to, over the winter, embark on upgrading a lot of the sidewalks and curb cuts in the downtown. So actually the downtown's going to have a bit of a makeover on the sidewalks and curbs. So I'm curious if in the CIP this crosswalk is identified or being considered for or funded for that type of facility, because clearly those are kind of the gold standard for intersections that have, this kind of condition.
yeah, it's kind of a surprise it hasn't been done yet anyway.
Yeah, I'd chime in that there's another K-8 school just down the block with children that might also use that crosswalk.
Any other questions from commissioners? If not, I would.
I have a few questions, actually. My dog is barking in the background. Sorry. I'll start with the 4 days a week. Is it the same 4 days every week? Which day is it not operating?
It's Monday through Thursday operating.
So there will be no kids there at all on Fridays?
That is my understanding, yes.
So I think I'm quite familiar with this area, and where it really becomes a problem is when there are kids' baseball games going on. There are a lot of parents park along here if their kids are playing. So I don't know if they're thinking about how to address that.
The applicant is in the audience, so you can ask some of these questions of them.
Okay, maybe my questions, I'll wait then. till-
Actually, can I just follow on that? The 4 days a week, is that actually required in the CUP? Can they actually hold them to that 4 days a week?
You can hold them to the operational program that they provided in the project description. So that sort of becomes part of the conditional use permit. You know, this is their description. So this is our understanding of what they're proposing, and they should be following their program.
Maybe
So-
the applicant can actually answer some of these.
Well, I was just thinking like, okay, the current applicant, while that school's in there, they may operate 4 days a week, but in many, years to come, let's say there's another, now it runs with the land. Now it sort of goes, there's a conditional use permits in place. Another school or another operation or change could happen in the future, and it may not be 4 days a week. It could be 5 days a week. I'm not objecting to the number of days. I was just curious to know, is this like a condition written in stone? Like if this is approved, but subject to this only ever being a 4 day a week operation?
If a different school in the future chooses to go into this facility and their program is different in terms of operations and procedures, different from the project description, they could come in and ask for a revised conditional use permit before the planning commission.
Okay, so it is only 4 days a week. That's all. It's actually written into this condition that this can only operate 4 days a week.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for Lorraine? I would now open it up to the public, and I see at least one hand or a couple hands.
I'm going to open it to Celeste. Celeste, you need to unmute your computer.
I'm actually the applicant, so I'm not sure if you're ready for me, but I'd be happy to clarify the number of days a week.
No, that would be if you're the applicant. Or
Can you please introduce yourself first, Celeste?
Sure,
officially?
I'm Celeste Ezell,
And I'm Daniel Ezell.
and we're the owners of Kronos Academy. So I believe that the application says that our after-school enrichment classes are 4 days a week. It doesn't say that the school, regular school hours are 4 days a week. It says the school is running Monday through Friday. Fridays, we typically do field trips, but it's not a 4 day a week school. The after school classes are Monday through Thursday. You were there. Go down just a little bit.
Oh, I see it now. I'm sorry. Yes.
So 8:30 to 3:30 Monday through Friday is school hours, just like a typical school week. And then the after school is 3:45 to 5, but that's only 4 days a week. So that should help with Friday afternoon and Friday evening, activities. And, we're not typically there on the weekends when the park is most operational for baseball games and such.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I
Yeah,
do.
I've got a couple. Oh, I'm sorry, Laura, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think it's said in the application or in this write-up, but I don't remember how many years the school's been operational.
Sure. We've been, this is our third year as a private school. We've owned our business for 15 years, but have grown into a private school gradually. But this is our third year officially as a private school, and we've been in San Anselmo at another church, at Red Hill Church.
And is the current enrollment at capacity? Is it the numbers that are in the application?
No, currently we have 12 students and 3 staff.
And so this application would start when? When would you move in?
We would move in as soon as it is approved or as soon as it's permissible. We've been using another space temporarily for the past 5 weeks. So we're excited to get started.
And how quickly do you think you would grow to this enrollment?
I assume next fall, we would have 20 to 30 students. So within the next 2 years, we would grow to 32.
Was the limit on enrollment your current space? Is that why it's smaller?
Exactly. We only are leasing 3 classrooms.
Maybe the 12 students are limited because we've been in location transition.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And so it's been difficult to recruit. We've got a lot more prospect for growth once we have established our location.
And I'll ask one last question and let my other fellow commissioners ask. What I couldn't really tell is I'm kind of curious the type of students that this attracts. Is it just, are these mainstream students? Are they gifted students? Are they, I just wasn't sure who would enroll in your school.
We're a micro school, so we typically attract gifted students and students with mild learning differences that benefit from a smaller class size. So, we've limited enrollment each class to 8 students for elementary and 12 for middle school, so that we can have lots of one-on-one attention for students. They do a presentation each week based on their own research, and they do making activities each day. If you're familiar with STEAM education and a makerspace.
And do they, where do they typically go on to high school?
We graduated 9 students last year from 8th grade, and they went to, I think, 6 different schools. So Archie Williams, Marin Academy, San Domenico, Kate boarding school, Marin Catholic. Is that all of them? So, and they've done well. Although the experience, their experience is a bigger school is much bigger, much more students. Our daughter also graduated last June, and she went on to Archie Williams.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Yeah, can I ask a couple of questions, Brock, if I might? Celeste, what is the legal status of the school? Is it a 501c3 or not?
No, we are in process of becoming an S corp, but right now we're just a general or a sole proprietorship officially.
Okay. And what is the accreditation profile for a school like yours? Is it the NAIS or the CAIS?
We are too new to be accredited. We have to be a school for 3 years minimum in order to start the process. So we're working on that.
Oh, that is something you tend to do?
Yes.
Okay. And then with regard to the physical layout of the application, I'm familiar with a sort of somewhat analogous situation where there is no on-site parking for parents. And it is in proximity to a stop sign as well. It's not as heavily, the area is not as heavily trafficked as this one. And one of the conditions that we have in terms of traffic management was that if the backup of the stop sign was more than 3 cars, then the parents were instructed not to stop but to go around the block rather than hold up traffic. I don't know if that's part of your traffic plan or not.
That's great advice.
That's great advice. Yeah, we can pass that along. Alexander is every time we've been on Alexander, it has been, fairly empty as far as moving traffic.
For our timing.
Right. and
As,
that's
as we see, we can definitely add that to our instructions.
That's good advice.
Yeah, because that would be the expectation of the of the neighborhoods. Since you said it isn't traffic, the expectation of the neighborhood is that it would remain relatively lightly trafficked.
Exactly.
That would alleviate the situation and perhaps avoid some problems in the future.
Sure.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have questions? If not, I think I'll bring it back to the
We do
commission.
have another individual waiting to speak.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna mute Celeste and allow Kristen Bennett to speak. Kristen, you need to unmute your computer.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Bennett, and some of you probably know me. I live at 8 Alexander Avenue. And this is the first I'm hearing of this, so I'm actually pretty surprised that I haven't been notified prior to this. But I'm hoping that you decline this application. The church and I have always been extremely cordial and have worked together to make their activities work for them and for me. But something like this, 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, with potentially 40 cars coming through the neighborhood at really high drop-off times. You have to realize there's also a school, Marin Primary, right across the way. So if I don't know what times you have been here, Celeste, the applicant, but I live here and I see every single morning at 8 o'clock, countless cars and no parking, quite frankly. So, there's not just Marin Primary School, but there's a park there and there's a tennis court. And JOAG activities are mostly on the weekends, but there is no parking on Alexander. So to bring in an additional 7 people to park every single day on Alexander would not be something that I advocate for. In addition, there have been a lot of activities at the church, and I know there's been classes there before, and what happens is the garbage tends to pile up and the kids litter in my front yard. And then, there's also other, organization or other groups that come in and there's always litter. And these are kids, of course, like I have 3 kids myself. You can't control it. It's just the amount of traffic and the number of people, there's always significantly more litter. And worse off is the privacy. These classrooms look into my backyard. And we've had trouble in the past with people in the classroom staring at the children while they're in their backyard playing. And so there's a noise issue, a privacy issue, and a massive parking and traffic issue. So I'm flabbergasted that this would actually even be considered.
Thank you, Kristen. Any other people that would like to speak? I see a hand, but I'm not sure if that wasn't the last hand.
That's the same hand.
Oh, I need to put my hand down. Sorry. Wait, I have more. I'm kidding. Okay.
Thank you. I think I'll bring it
Yeah,
back.
one more hand up now.
Okay.
I believe it might be James Holmes again. James, I have just allowed you to talk.
James Holmes, Larkspur, and I unmuted it correctly this time. It was my mistake the last time. Just to perhaps reiterate a couple of points in response to the last speaker. I'm a member of the Redwoods Church, incidentally. This is essentially a continuation of the status quo in the sense that there have been schools there before, and my impression is that some of them had approximately the same level of activity, so that this is not really something substantially new and different than what was existing there previously. And with regard to the privacy, The applicant has huge plants. I think they may be redwood trees on their property, alongside their property to provide privacy, and it actually cuts off the light to the classrooms, and I think technically it's an illegal vegetative fence that extends beyond the 6 feet that would be allowed, but the church has not objected to it. So I do believe that there is substantial vegetative material that provides privacy, and I would say, as somebody who's worked there at the church, I mean, noise emanates from the from number 8. Alexander also. So, I mean, it's one of those things that I would say, if anything, it goes in both directions. But I think the primary issue from a planning standpoint is this is not a substantial increase in the use from what has occurred there for a number of years. The litter issue is apparently something that I would hope that the applicant would take to heart and pay attention to and attempt to address. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Just for the commission's notification, just kind of put this page up for you. The 2 classrooms that face towards 8 Alexander Avenue actually are church use classrooms as part of their schooling program. The classrooms that are available to the applicant are here is their 3rd through 4th on the side and the end here in the middle. And then the other 2 are up here and they also they're underneath the actual worship portion of the church. They're below it.
I did have a quick question. I assume that the church, all the handicap bathrooms, et cetera, that's all been accounted for. Yep. I couldn't get in there to poke around, but and that would be a part of a school, presumably, and it's been used as a school and a number of other things also. So I didn't know if you'd been there or not, Kristen.
Lorraine would have to be the one who answers that.
Yeah, so when I did go to the facilities, I did walk around and I did see the bathrooms, and to me, they appeared to be accessible, although I didn't go through to literally check for every rule of the accessibility laws. But perhaps I don't know if the pastor could answer that question, if she's, or maybe Celeste can indicate whether or not the bathrooms have been upgraded per the accessibility standards.
I do believe this was forwarded to several departments, and we did get some conditions from fire. They did an inspection, but it isn't my project, so I don't recall, but I don't think it was anything significant that they asked for.
No, it wasn't.
I'm pretty sure it's okay. I was just, I thought maybe the applicant knew that answer, but it doesn't matter that much.
I'm sorry, I have one more question, and that is that I wonder, how long is the lease for?
I would have to allow Celeste to speak. Just so you know, Kristen Bennett has raised her hand again as well.
Our lease is for 1 year with the option to renew.
Evergreen or renew for only 1 year?
I think that we would renew a year at a time, according to the lease. I could look it up.
Okay. Is there anybody else that has their hand raised? Can you see?
The neighbor at 8 Alexander would like to speak again.
Okay, briefly.
Kristen, you need to go ahead and.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Thank you, Kristen. Could you just clarify, the classrooms in question are not the ones that are facing my backyard? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that makes it a lot better. And I just also want to clarify that the fence that has gone up was at the request of the church. So it wasn't actually me infringing on church property. In addition, the redwoods that are up do not screen for privacy. So if there were another classroom put in like towards the back of the property that faces my property, I would expect, accommodations to be made for privacy. So that really just leaves the issue of, traffic and parking, which, is going to be quite difficult, unfortunately, at these times. So if there's anything you could do, maybe have the church put in a parking lot or do something, or have the school put in a parking lot. I know, certainly as a resident, I've always had to put in additional parking whenever I remodeled a home. I would hope that, there would be consistency here for that. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you. If there are no other people in the audience, I would like to bring it back to the commission.
Anyone who'd like to speak, please raise your hand.
I have a question for Lorraine. So what I heard in the conversations was that the lease for the school was 1 year renewal, but it would renew. It could be renewed, but it could terminate after 1 year. But just so I understand correctly, the CUP exists longer than the year. That would be there indefinitely.
The use runs with the land until a new use or a new school, for instance, comes in, or some other use. Yes.
Okay.
And that would
Okay, so,
have to,
Or if it's discontinued for 180 consecutive days or longer.
if
So
what's discontinued? If the
If
use,
if the school discontinues operations and 6 months passes, essentially the use permit expires per our municipal code.
oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that. So
That's
actually,
in the
it just
conditions of
keeps
approval.
going. Okay. So if the school goes away, then eventually that CUP falls away as well. Okay.
Yes.
But as long as they keep leasing it, these conditions would still hold.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay.
I ask one more quick question. In the conditions, in the conditional use permit itself, is there a cap on the number of students which would be allowed to enroll?
my understanding is that the cap would be specific to the project description, which again would serve up to 32 students plus 5 teachers and 2 administrative staff.
Okay, so they would not be allowed to enroll a 33rd student.
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty common for for independent schools to have caps.
It's condition number 2, permitted use.
Okay, up to 30. Okay.
Okay. I guess I would, since Daniel was just speaking, maybe he can start, give his thoughts on this.
That'll teach me. So I see no reason to deny the application. Just as a reminder, the Planning Commission is not authorized to regulate the behavior of an applicant. We can regulate or either permit or deny a permit with regard to program and other elements of land use, but we cannot say, well, we can't regulate. Well, we can't even really speculate as to whether or not children who enroll in the school are going to dispose of their trash. That's certainly that's not allowed, but it's not up to the Planning Commission to try to police that. So the remaining issue, as far as I'm concerned, is, well, is this necessarily going to contribute to some kind of a traffic Armageddon? And with that number of students, I don't, and the small number of staff, I don't really see that happening. I could be wrong, and certainly I would welcome a traffic management, an aggressive traffic management plan on the part of the school, such as one element which I suggested, which would make sure that traffic kept circulating, and parents would be required to circle a block if there were any kind of a backup of that stop sign. And I don't know if that can be included as a condition or not. I'll leave that up to staff to determine. But otherwise, I just can't see myself objecting too strenuously to this.
Thank you, Daniel. Natasha?
Yeah, thanks, Brock. So I want to start by actually acknowledging Kristen Bennett's comments. I did actually go by the site today and did note the close proximity of number 8, Alexander, sort of to the church. Unfortunately, I do think that's a natural conflict between new uses of land and existing residences. So I think ultimately this is a good adaptive use of the existing space in the church. And it has been previously used for classrooms as well and seems to have been successful. I do, so I'm inclined to kind of make the findings from the CUP from that perspective. I will add that I do agree with Daniel on the potential traffic issues. I think with parking, parking is definitely lacking here significantly, but it's kind of the future of city living and people have to adapt. There's just more cars than there are spaces. And I think that this is sort of the ways of things are going when you live in a city. But if there's something that can be done on the traffic and investigation into the traffic, which is I think different from parking, I would welcome that too.
Thank you, Natasha. Let's see, Laura?
But unmute first. I have budget thoughts, I guess, about this. I should say that my kid, I live on Plum Hill. My kids went to Marin Primary, and I was on the board for 14 years of the school. So I do know there's a lot of cars that come to Marin Primary for drop off and pick up. And there may only be baseball games on the weekends, but there are kids that come and practice after school during the week. There are kids in Joe Wagner. The other thing is that people who are dropping kids off at Neil Cummins take that shortcut and they go up over the hill. So there's actually quite a bit of traffic for Neil Cummins parents coming off Magnolia that go up Alexander. So I think the issue to me is really going to be, these are older kids and parents aren't really going to park. They're going to drop off the kids and the kids are just going to get out of the cars. So the parking is really more about staff, I think, that are going to be there all day while they're working there. And not so much, parking. I guess I will say that this church has a long history of being a place where school, an incubator for schools. Marin Primary actually started as a preschool in that church, in the basement, same idea. So, I know that there have been a lot of schools there. And I guess my feeling is that this is a continuation of use that's already occurred and at about the same level that's already occurred in the past. So while I feel for the people who are concerned about the traffic, because I'm really very well aware of that on that corner, I feel like it's not inconsistent with what has been the historical use of this space. So I guess because of that, I'm in support of the application.
Thank you. And I guess that leaves me, since Jeff has bailed on us. So I think my concern is the traffic, obviously, and and secondarily, it would be nice, I think, when I think of schools, I think of kids also wanting to run around and exercise, and that's something that really can't happen in this particular instance. But there are different kinds of schools, so I'm wondering if it's possible to review this application or something along those lines as a condition of approval in 1 year, or whether that's something that we really can't do. It's more just seeing how it interfaces with the neighborhood, and I guess I would support a school for kids, and it's a small school, but I do have some misgivings about this particular location. So that's where I am. If somebody would like to move to approve or not, would.
I will move to approve the conditional use permit
Do I have a second?
as recommended by staff,
Subject to the conditions of approval.
subject to the conditions approval.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
And can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Tauber,
Aye.
Commissioner Wagstaff,
Aye.
Commissioner Chalmers,
Aye.
Commissioner Kunstler,
Aye.
and for the record, Commissioner Swisher is absent.
Thank you. I guess the next item is a business item, or the first of a business item. So we will move on to that. Is there, is that a staff report on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to raise it up. Oh, I wasn't really prepared to speak, since it's a business item, but if you like, I could introduce it.
I really don't think it's necessary unless somebody else feels that they want you to do that. Don't hear any voices out there. So we'll bring it back for discussion if people want to discuss it, or a vote. Any discussion out there?
I only have one question, and that is, since I forget what year, the city had already given the applicant permission to build a dining room into the easement and other, basically big encroachments on this easement. Is there any financial remuneration to the city for basically quit claiming this?
No. The applicant has to pay for the cost of our processing the requests that go into granting them this land. But the land is owned by the public essentially, and the city can't request money for its value.
Laura, actually, I had a very similar question on this earlier today, and I think it's actually quite disappointing that there is no ability for the city to get any financial gain from this, when this is really valuable land.
And it's a pretty significant parcel. It's pretty large.
I agree, and it's a very high value, especially with today's prices and land values. And it's effectively being gifted to the homeowner, and that's great for the homeowner, but you could think of many ways that the money could be used in the future if it came to the city. So I mean, Kristen can talk to this. I'm not sure.
Excuse me. Sorry, this is the director. We've, the city attorney has, this has long been an issue, and the city attorney, this has been vetted through city attorney, city manager. Believe me, a city manager would love to, get more money in the city coffers where available. But because this is public right of way, there are certain limitations under and procedures under streets and highway code that allow for abandonment, and the city is not really in position. Doesn't own it as fee title to sell. And I want to choose my words carefully because this is sort of a technical issue. But what I will do is I'm going to ask the Public Works Director to clarify this issue. So, because I think we're going to see these come up more often. We're seeing about 3 to 4 a year, 2 to 3 a year, maybe. And part of the reason for that is because where the city used to discourage acquisition and require people to simply go through licensing and encroachments, the city is now, because of the liabilities that exist with these areas, the city is actually encouraging, if people are going to use them or need, to improve their access or so on, they're actually being encouraged to pay for the process for abandonment. So I think we're just going to see this more often. So I'll get clarity on that, so it's clear why the city can or cannot charge more of a fee or realize potential assessed value out of these areas. Because they're rights of ways, there's just certain limitations, as I understand it, under streets and highways code.
Neil, I feel like part of the issue in this particular case is that whenever it was, what sticks in my head was 1967. I don't have it open in front of me because we didn't get any hard copies. But whatever year it was that the city granted, the ability to literally build, expand their house onto this land, I feel like the city gave up the ability to use that land for any other purpose. I mean, effectively, the city quit claim then.
Well, that's the case somewhat as well when the city has allowed people to use the land. Obviously, you could limit, how much you give, but then you're just sort of carving out pieces, and the city ends up being responsible because of issues of vegetation, erosion, any sort of liability to do with that land. The city is part of it. So there is a desire to reduce the city's liability to what's really needed for public access and utilities, as opposed to owning, being responsible for swaths of big hillside cuts and toppling trees. Now there's variations on that because still property owners can be responsible for vegetation. It's still incumbent on the city to notify them and enforce it. So there's a lot of push-pull about the liability and improvements in these areas and fixes if there is damage or erosion. So
Neil, do you know if there is a value attached to it in terms of an increase in property taxes, or is it just a big zero?
I don't know that if there's a value and increase in property taxes. From a zoning perspective, usually these areas are particularly where they're pretty steep, it's not adding a lot of entitlement unless it's really flat land areas. But typically, they're in these hillside areas where they're steep, it's not necessarily generating what you'd call a lot of entitled floor area, but it's certainly creating more elbow room for improvements. So it's kind of hard to judge just how much value is there.
Because we did one of these just a few months ago too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was involving where a pool was located.
Right.
Partially into the right of way.
Okay.
Now, Neil, if the applicant, the owner of this property, were to after this process is completed, decide to make some kind of improvements, those improvements would add to the value of the house. It would be subject to taxation. I think that's true.
Well, that's true. That's certainly true.
But just to be clear, what you're saying is the city's position is that it actually is in the city's interest, not just the interest of the applicant, but in the city's interest to see this happen in order to shift the liability from this for anything that might happen onto the homeowner as opposed to onto the rest of the citizens of the town.
Yeah, it's really disposing of excess rights of way that don't serve a greater public purpose, because the public, and I mean, I could have my own opinions about it. I mean, I think there's some benefit to having more control if that's what the city wants, from whether it's aesthetics, but certainly it's not getting the public, public doesn't have the opportunity really to go and sit on someone's front yard or steps. It's not doing much, as opposed to some of the streets. There are paper streets which have some value because you might have paths and utilities that are getting through paper streets. And to some degree, they can also provide a level of open space. And that's, potentially a policy issue, but the public works and has been really kind of shifted towards shedding the liability issues that exist with these types of excess frontages.
Thanks, Neil. Does anybody want any other additions? Do we need to make a recommendation, like the staff recommendation that's a long paragraph here, or how do we handle doing this?
We provided you with a motion that seems to be the preferred motion. So if you could just read it, that would be great.
Which is staff recommends the following motion. Okay. Should I read that? Or does somebody want to make that motion and read it?
Let's see. I have to pull up the.
Daniel, why don't you make that motion and read that paragraph?
Find the, because there was some kind of confusion with the document. So I actually had to go onto the agenda and click on it. Here we go.
Page 3.
Do you want me to read it? I have it in front of me.
Yeah. Why don't you?
Okay. Okay. I have it here. So if I'm reading the wrong thing, let me know, but I think I have the right thing here. It goes, as proposed, the purpose, location, and extent of vacation of a portion of Laurel Avenue right-of-way adjacent to 24 Laurel Avenue is consistent with the Larkspur General Plan. Although Action Program 7 of the Trails and Paths element of the general plan calls for the paper streets as public trails or paths, this area is unsuitable for this purpose. Further, the proposed vacation applies only to the access right-of-way width that is not needed for the purposes of maintaining an adequate roadway, maintaining on-street parking, and existing city-maintained facilities. Now it's going to make the motion.
Somebody like the second thing.
I forgot to say I need that.
Can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Tauber? Whoops.
I will say yes, but I'm not thrilled about it.
Commissioner, oh, sorry. Do you want to say any more? Okay. Commissioner Kunstler?
Likewise with the disappointment that the city can't extract a little bit of money from this, I'll say aye.
Commissioner Chalmers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have a legal position to not agree, but it would be great to hear what Neil comes up with from the Public Works Department. But yes, aye.
Chair Wagstaff?
And I reflect what everybody else has said and say I say aye also.
And for the record, Commissioner Swisher is absent. I had a brain fade there.
Okay, would somebody like to move to approve the minutes of August 24th?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the minutes for August 24th, not 2021.
I can second.
Do we need a roll call for that, or if we just all be in favor?
I was not there, so I'm abstaining.
I
Okay,
think we do a roll call.
okay.
Commissioner Chalmers,
Yes.
Commissioner Kunstler,
Yes.
Chair Wagstaff.
Yes,
Okay, and for the record, Commissioner Swisher is absent, so that is 1 abstention and 1 absent. And 3-4.
are there any planning commissioner reports? Seeing none or hearing none, would somebody like to move to adjourn?
Sure, I'll move to adjourn.
I can second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Hey,
Let
well,
me
thank you
stop.
very much. I'm writing a email to our Public Works Director now. I think he's kind of answered this before, but I'll make sure we get some clarity.
Yeah, that would be good. You know,
And
It would
even
be
if we
good.
can't, how do we change it to allow us to do that in the future?
I'll see if that's even in the cards. Yeah,
what's that?
I don't
It sounds like
disagree. I'm a
maybe we
little,
can't.
yeah.